Everyone. Um, Good evening and welcome to Seven Stories Up, Guy Delisle with Eadweard Muybridge. We are delighted to have you all joining us today at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Allison Ellis and I'm a supervising librarian of programming and outreach here at SNFL. And before we begin, I'd like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this evening's conversation possible. And I would like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at future Seven Stories Up programs just like this one. We have an excellent lineup this season featuring up-and-coming literary voices, one-of-a-kind performances, and hopefully future award-winning nonfiction. And we would love for you to join us in this space again. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. Born in Quebec City in Canada in 1966, Guy Delisle now lives in the south of France with his wife and 2 children. Delisle spent 10 years working in animation, which allowed him to learn about movement and drawing. He is best known for his travelogues about life in faraway countries, Burma Chronicles, Jerusalem, Chronicles from the Holy City, Pyongyang, and Shenzhen. In 2012, Guy Delisle was awarded the prize for Best Album for the French edition of Jerusalem at the Angoulême International Comics Festival. Sarah Glidden was born in 1980 in Massachusetts and studied painting at Boston University. She started making comics in 2006 when she was living at the Flux Factory Artists Collective in Queens, New York, and soon began working on her first book, How to Understand Israel in 60 Days or Less. The first chapters of this were self-published as mini-comics, earning her the Ignatz Award for Promising New Talent in 2008. The complete book was published in 2012 and was translated into 5 languages. Glidden's short-form work has appeared in various newspapers and magazines, as well as in Best American Comics anthologies. She spent a year as an artist in residence at the Maison des Auteurs in Angoulême, France. Her second book, Rolling Blackouts, Dispatches from Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, was published by Drawn and Quarterly in October 2016, quickly becoming a New York Times bestseller, appearing on 15 Best of the Year lists, and earning her the Lynn Ward Graphic Novel Prize. Glidden lives in Brooklyn, New York, and it is now my pleasure to welcome up tonight's speakers.
Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to be talking to Guy tonight. I've known you for a long time now. One of my favorite nonfiction cartoonists. And yeah, I guess you're not going to do your talk, but we have some images from the book there.
Yeah, sometimes I do a presentation on my own, but these are the image extracts from the book here and there.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be making this book. How did you get the idea?
Yeah, I've done a lot of autobiography by the past, and I wanted to do biography from a long time. When I was working on these books, I was thinking I could have the same kind of way of working, but with a different material. It would be someone else's. So I met Muybridge when I was a student in animation. I studied next to Toronto at Sheridan College animation, and all the students had that book of animation was either animal in motion or human in motion. And so I thought for the longest time that he was just a kind of scientific guy who took pictures of lots of movements and lots of animals in the Victorian era with naked people. So I thought, well, that's it. And then one day I was just working and listening to a radio show, and they had all the life of Muybridge. And then I realized that, wow, he was much more than that, and he had kind of a crazy life. And well, since he's a pioneer of photography and cinema, and a lot of these pioneers have been forgotten, I thought it would be interesting to talk about him. And it was just, well, I think it was just a good story to tell because his life was kind of crazy.
Yeah, tell me a little. So you read some biographies.
Yeah, right.
Watched some movies. And something that really interested me, because I also do nonfiction comics, is just the amount of reference that you must have had to look up, because everything looks like actually not only people's costumes and the cities and everything, but the technical aspects of all of these machines
Yeah.
that he made and these other inventors made. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of visual reference you did? And
Yeah, the way I work, I read 3 biography. They were all in English, and most of my books are for the French community, well, the French people. And I thought it's going to be interesting since nobody knows about Muybridge in France. And the way I work is I don't do the whole research. Like, I thought I was okay after 2 weeks because I read these 3 biography, and I took notes of everything that I thought was interesting, strange, just funny or crazy, and then I put that into a list. And parallel to that, I was looking at historically what happened at that time, like politically or the inventions. And I thought, well, it would be nice to put that into context because he was right at the beginning of photography. He was still using daguerreotype, which is really the first version of photography that we still have pictures. And after that, he was using wet collodion. And so I wanted to explain these techniques so we know how it was to take a picture. So like in this one, where he's in Yosemite Park, he was actually, you had to carry 50 kilos of material on your back. I think he had a donkey at one point. And so you had to prepare the plate because it's made of glass. And then you do the picture, you take the picture, and then you have to reveal it in a little lab with all the chemicals that you have to carry in glass bottle. So it was, you had to be in very good shape to take pictures in a park back in these days. And so the way I work is, and then after 2 weeks, I thought, well, I have enough, so I start my first pages. And then I realized that I needed more info on this and then more info on that, and I would spend a few hours on internet. And for the time where it was before photography, that's a bit complicated because there's no photos. So you have to, you look at paintings, and these are your reference, or gravure, or like sketching, etchings. And that's what the people had in the newspaper. There was no photos in the newspaper. They would look at drawings and think, wow, okay, that's the reality. It was sometimes based on photos, but so yeah, you have to use that. But once the photo is there, it's easier. So you get all these photos from on the internet. When you go to get these old photos, it was hard to go on in the West Coast to take pictures of the lighthouse. And you find all that on the internet. You go on the Library of Congress, and you find all that. They're open source, so you can use them. So I've put a few in the book. Yeah.
he was a really interesting person, maybe not entirely likable.
No, he's not. Yeah.
Did you, when you were reading about him, like, what's it like making a book about someone that you don't really like that much?
Yeah, it's strange, but after 2 years spending with him, well, he killed someone, and and so he was very impetuous because he came back. Well, he traveled with a stagecoach, and they had an accident. One guy died, and he was ejected, and he smashed his head to a rock, and he was 9 days in coma. And then his beard and hair turned white. And he was seeing double, and so anyhow. And after that, people were testifying against him when he was in court. That he became just different, very impetuous, and he would go in fits, and that's what happened. Anyhow, so he killed someone, and at the end of his life, someone asked him if he regretted to kill someone, and he said, "I regret just one thing: is that he didn't suffer longer." So he was not a very likable person, but on the technical side of life, and he was kind of a genius in one way. In all the invention he did, and he always lived poorly. So at the end of his life, he was staying with his cousin in that little house. He only knew one girl that became his wife. That didn't last very long. But that's all we know from him. So after 2 years working on this unlikable guy, you kind of find a few angles that make him not so bad.
Kind of the central image or the central part of the story is that he the photographs of the horse in motion is kind of what he's famous for,
Yeah, right.
and how he got his start. But it really came from just a bet from Leland Stanford, who founded Stanford College, with someone else about whether or not the horse's hooves come all up off the ground when
Right.
they're running.
It was a big debate. It's hard to imagine, but they would go nuts. And the horse and the people who train horse were very high society people. They had newspaper, and some of them were saying, you know, the horse is like that. And Stanford wanted to know because he was training horse, and that would make a difference on how you train horse when they're very young. And he got that magazine from an experience that was done by a French scientific guy who on the hooves had a rubber pads that were pushing air, and with the little on a little graphic, he could see that whenever the hoof was up or down, he could see it. So he had the graphic on that magazine article proving that the horse was leaving the ground when he was running at full speed. So Stanford was very excited. He says, we need a photo for that. And Muybridge was the most famous photograph at the time, but for his landscape, not for anything technical at all. He was more like an artist. And he came he actually hired him first to take pictures of his house, who had like something like 40 rooms. It was the biggest house in all of the United States. He was the richest guy. And he was working with horse, and he was a senator as well. So politic, richest guy, and he spent his time on the locomotion, not not starships, but so he looks like someone we know today. But he was actually like the producer of that picture, and Muybridge was the director, because then Muybridge told him it's not possible, because at the time you had this camera, there was no shutter, you take your hat, you go 1 to 10, and boom, the photo was taken. It was taking a long time. So Muybridge had to go and invent a shutter. That's him who invented the shutter. So even today, I was taking pictures with my phone, and you hear the sound going shlik shlik, and that's actually the old sound of the mechanical shutter in the old cameras, and that comes from Muybridge actually, but it's still in our phone. That's funny. He's still here with us in our pockets, and I think it took them 4 to 7 years. It's more like 3 attempts to achieve that. To have that picture of the horse, where he had the solution, and that's a time where you had only plagues on. It's wet collodion. I mean, it's such an impossible thing to do, and to go to 1/1000th of a second. That's what he had to do. That was not done. And this picture was taken in 1874. And that was the first time because when the horse runs, that's what you see. You cannot see how it goes, actually. You just wonder, and everybody was trying to know. And with the picture, it was the first time that a picture was showing something that the eye couldn't see. So that was the beginning of special effects and all sorts of stuff. And that was the machine was taking over human. Like now we can see motion at 1/1000th of a second. So that was the first time.
It's fascinating because if you're an artist, you want to be able to draw people in motion, people walking. So you just take a picture, you can see what it looks like, you can learn from that. But at the time, painters didn't have that. So you have a section in the book where you talk about how painters were painting these horses running in all these ridiculous ways, like with the front out and the back legs out, and
they look like frog, basically.
Just because the eye cannot just stop the motion long enough to see.
And these paintings very popular.
Like
that's
that horse in the foreground, which is kind of like
that doesn't really work well. And everybody was doing it like that, like the Abyssinian, basically. When you look at the very, very old representation of horse, they jump like frogs, and people were doing that for the longest time. It's just after. So whenever you go in a museum, and I was at a museum the other day, You can tell if the picture has been taken before 1874 or not, because after that, just like Hergé, he actually have used one picture from Muybridge to do one of his image in a comic book. And it's been used over and over everywhere since then. Even nowadays, when you go on Google and you want to look a horse and the steps of a horse, well, you have the Muybridge page. So he's been there for a long time, and doing all these movements. That's what I was looking at when I was a student in animation. All these movements, because they're still very precise and they were very well done, and nobody had to do more than that, because he had, after the horse, he just developed his system, and he has taken pictures of everything that he could. So it was actually too much, basically, because the amount of pictures was like 11 books of this size, and he was trying to sell that. He was good at selling photos, but books, he was pretty bad. Like he was not a very good editor. And at the end of his life, one publisher said, we like your books, but we would like to republish that, but in a very small form, in 2 books, one for animals and one for humans. And that's the book that is still selling today. So it's 150 years afterwards. That's a book sell. That's how to say that.
There's even my kid
It's
had a birthday
bestseller.
party recently. we rented out like a cinema room, and she showed some short animations. But then the party favors, we found these like little flip books that were Muybridge,
Yeah.
and it's just like, this is just mass market, and now.
Yeah, and flip books was before cinema. People have seen before cinema movements in flip books that was very popular. And that's what I've included a few in my comic books.
There's some little flip book sections in the book.
Because after stopping the movement, Muybridge invented a little projector, which is crazy because he was doing that 15 years. He was giving shows like lecture, and then he would show his image of the horse, and with his machine he would start moving the horse, and people would go, wow.
Can you talk a little bit about there's a section in the book that talks a little bit about the scene from The Matrix.
Yeah, because the same system he applied. So he had these 12 cameras, and on The Matrix they had 100 little cameras, and they are and they all go on one fraction of a second very quickly. But it's exactly the same system that Muybridge did for the horse and for the animals after that. That he have used throughout his life. And I think he started from 12, and then he had 24 cameras, and that was it. And so that's famous special effect. It's based on exactly the system of Muybridge. But nowadays it's called bullet shot. I think it's...
When there's like a rotating shot around.
Yeah, when there's that, because they use it once in a while as for a special effect. They call it the bullet shot, yeah. Which is too bad. Well, and considering the life of Muybridge, it's too bad it's called bullet shot. And I wish they would have said the Muybridge shot, because I mean that's really taken from him. Yeah.
You got your start in animation, like you said. I think, was Pyongyang your first comic book?
My second, yeah, because I had one on China before, yeah. But it was not prepared as a book, yeah. But so the first book I've done, well, I thought, well, it was planned to be a book, is actually Pyongyang, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in that book, you were there because you were working in animation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Are you still making animations these days?
No, I've stopped doing animation after Pyongyang. That's right, because I came back from Pyongyang. So it was outsourced. The animation was outsourced. I was just there to do the quality control, basically. And I liked it because I was traveling. I went to China, Vietnam, and then all of a sudden everybody was going in North Korea, believe it or not. But that's a long time ago. And after that, I thought, well, I'm just going to try to do comic books because I've did Shenzhen before. And my wife at the time was starting to work with Doctors Without Border, and she could go abroad for a year. And the idea was I would follow her, work on my comics, and then come back. So actually, she had 1 year mission in Ethiopia. So I did Pyongyang in Addis Ababa the whole year I spent there. I worked so much, Jesus. That was the time before internet, and I mean, we were in Ethiopia. She was working all the time. We had no kids, help. And I think I brought 10 CDs of music, and I've listened to that for a whole year. I was so fed up with this music, but I had nothing else, no radio, no nothing. I was just working on that. And then at the end of the year, I came to my publisher, said, well, I have, this book about Pyongyang. Well, they knew I was working on that, but I said, well, if you're interested. And they were, so we were all, doing, that was published in, I think, 2001, yeah.
Yeah. Something I noticed about this book, the style of how you draw figures has gotten much longer and lankier, and kind of, it's more animated in a way. Like,
Maybe,
was that something, like, conscious that you did? Or it's just kind of like, drawings evolve as you keep working?
No, it's not conscious, but elongated, yeah, you notice that really well, because I don't do that usually. And but Muybridge is a skinny guy, and
He's pointy.
it's really pointy. And the funny thing is, there's stuff that I don't like. Among the stuff I'm not very fond of drawing is horse and people with beard. And so, but then, if you illustrate what you have to illustrate, and Muybridge had a long beard all his life, and he looks like one of these guy from ZZ Top, basically.
Yeah.
But all the Victorian time, they were all were having beard and mustache, and you couldn't avoid that.
Yeah, the clothes look fun to draw.
Yeah.
It's in black and white, which makes sense because
Almost,
all
yeah.
the photography is black and
That's
white.
right, yeah.
But you do have some spot color. How
Yeah.
did you decide when to use color and when
So,
to leave it?
Well, the whole book had to be in color because there was a photo I was using that were in color, like the paintings. So we decided it's going to be color. But my black and white is more sepia-ish because I've actually used this kind of purpley brown. It's not actually black white because that's what the color nowadays look like of that era. When you use a wet collodion, it kind of turns like purpley gray. And so I've used that basically. But once in a while, when there is a need for color, I use it. Like when there's a sound or when he goes into rage, so I use red all over the place. And for the dark room, because they develop photo in the dark room. I don't want to explain it's a dark room, so all I have to do is put a red in front of the whole image, and we understand it's the dark room, and it works really well. Just for that, yeah. I'm not very good with color, so I like it simple, and that's the books that appear that attracts me are the ones that are usually just two color or even black and white. So, yeah, my next book is probably going to be in black and white, because I start with black and white, and then I had the opportunity to do color. But I think I prefer black and white anyhow, yeah. But for that kind of story, it was nice to have more maybe mood and have more, So it worked for that one anyhow.
Are you working digitally these days or still pen on paper?
I work on paper,
Nice.
a bit bigger than the book, and pen and ink, and Chinese ink. I use a little blue pencil to do the sketch. And the way I work is I do my text in the morning and I prepare the page because I know that on the list I have now they're going to prepare for to take the picture, and I know that I'm going to probably do 1 or 2 pages on that. So and I do the sentence that's going to be in the page in the morning, work on the text. That's a lot of work actually to do the text, and we usually just talk about the drawing, but the text part takes as much time. And I try to do text very simple, just like very small sentence, sujet, verbe, complément, subject, verb, and complément. And I put out, and then in the afternoon I do the drawing. And on a good day, I do 1 page a day, which is a good rhythm for me, because then I have the feeling that I kind of read 1 page a day, and I'm kind of a slow reader. And I know what I've done the day before and then the day before, and it helps for the rhythm because after working on a few pages where it's more text, I need a page where we're gonna breathe a little bit, and then let's go outside and have just 1 page. So that's how it works. And I use the blue now because someone told me that the blue is cool because you can scan in color and remove the blue. Whereas before I was just using these pencil and erase and erase and erase a lot because it's actually you have to be very tedious, otherwise it comes black. And next to your chair you have that pile of rubbery stuff next to you. And no, it's crazy. It takes a long time. And now the blue, it's nice. It goes faster. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you don't write a script beforehand. You just started at the beginning of the story and just kind of worked your way forward.
I've tried to do the whole thing before, but it doesn't work because I have to be in the detail. Otherwise, it's just kind of a presentation of the book. And the only time I've done that, I wrote and then I don't even go back to that. It's just like it was good for a presentation, but actually for the book, it doesn't work because I need to go on. I'm going to explain his everyday life. So in 1850, he arrives in New York. He's a librarian, not a librarian, but he works in a bookstore. So, because he knew a lot about books. And so he works for 6 months and then he gets bored. So that's going to be the first page. I'll have to go really beyond that. And at the end, I know that, well, I'm going to need this to draw and this to draw. So after that, sometimes, okay, now after that, he goes in California. So maybe I need a special image of California. So this is not planned. It kind of goes all along. Yeah. So. And I prefer it like that anyhow, and I wouldn't know how to do otherwise. I've seen some of my friends where they have sketched the whole book, and sometimes it's like 200 pages, and after that they have to ink 200 pages, and then they have to erase 200 pages. I don't know. So for me, it's not as fun as in the morning. I work on the text, and then I do a bit of research sometimes because I need more info on this and that. And then I just complete the page and I draw at the end of the day. That makes my day more diverse.
Yeah, you said this took 2 years to make?
Yeah, 2 years. The color is long though, because someone helped me at the end with the color. I think we spent 4 months on the color.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it's a bit tedious. Yeah.
Wow, but that is very fast. To do a book like this with so much research involved.
Yeah, the research sometime, as I was working, for example, I was listening to a great podcast about a scholar who did like 5 hours on the influence of photo on the first painters. Because in the book, I like to explain the impact on Muybridge work on photography. And the impact that photography had on painters, and the impact that had in movies. Because since he was projecting, well, he's actually the first guy who did that. He did projection of films like 14 years before Edison and Les Frères Lumière. So he was the first guy who did project movies, basically. So anyhow, I explained he died in 1904. And what the movie became when he died in 1904. It's amazing how fast it has developed. So yeah, all that is in the book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, towards the end of the book, you kind of get in a little bit to the life of Edison, the Lumiere brothers. Was it hard not to get kind of going down rabbit holes and getting sucked into their lives and their stories a little bit?
Yeah, I do it briefly because I wanted to show the link between Muybridge, who helped Marais in France. He's that other chronophotographic guy, and actually they were connected together. They were actually writing, and Marais asked Muybridge, "Can you come in Europe and help me for my work?" And he did. And so in France, nobody knows much about that. And anyhow, after that, everybody was copying each other at the time. Edison really. Muybridge asked Edison if he would not cooperate. That's not so much the kind of Edison to cooperate, to do a combo with sound and movement, because Muybridge was doing the movement, and with the phonograph that Edison just recently invented, they could put together their two inventions. So Edison was very interested to meet Muybridge, but more to see his machine, his zoopraxinoscope. That's what he was called it. He wanted to see that, and the day after he saw Muybridge, he said, "No, I don't think I'm going to work with you." But he started to work on his movie machine. So there was very direct influence. And after that, the Lumière watched. They opened up the Edison machine and they thought, "Oh, this is working okay, and maybe we can do better." And blah, blah, blah. And they, in one night, Louis Lumière invented cinema as we know it today. Yeah. So this is all linked, and it goes right to Muybridge right at the beginning. Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating that cinema might not have been invented as we know it if there hadn't been this really rich guy who wanted to win a bet with a friend about whether the horse's hooves touch the ground or not.
It just helped to start the cinema probably 10 years before, because Muybridge was working with these at the time where there was no instant photo. Instant photo was invented 5 years after, and so they could use plaques that were ready-made. They would put in the camera, and then Kodak invented his instant photo very quickly, and cinema would have been invented in the following of that, but it was just like 10 years before.
I guess, does anyone have any questions for Guy?
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was sent to Alaska, Muybridge. That's the photo of Alaska, and Alaska was just bought. I think it's 1865, right? You Americans must know that.
Yeah, they called it Seward's Folly.
And
like, why did you buy Alaska?
That's right.
What a useless piece of land. And then they found a lot of oil and gold up there. So.
Oh, but before the oil, the army said, well, we need someone to take pictures so people are not going to criticize so much. So they sent Muybridge to take pictures of Alaska, and people said, oh, it actually looks like a nice place. And no, it just calmed down the people, and it worked. Just like he made the valley of Yosemite very popular among California, because it was at the time in 1855 just new. California was just conquered over the Spanish, right? And then the people discovered that, wow, we have a beautiful land, and that's what made him very popular.
Yeah, between him and Stanford, Leland Stanford was one of the people who financed the Transcontinental Railroad. And so between Muybridge publicizing the beauty of Yosemite and then there being trains to actually take people there, they're probably together really responsible for people like going out west and populating that part of the country. It's interesting. So we can take some questions from the audience.
If you have a question, just raise your hand. I'm going to be running around with a microphone.
Hi, thanks. You were just talking about Stanford. Do you think, was there any why do you think he turned on Muybridge so abruptly? It didn't feel like there was any foreshadowing of that. He seemed like he wasn't a jerk.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly, but from what happened is while Muybridge was touring in Europe and showing his photos, he received a book that Stanford back in the States published with his pictures and explaining with a doctor very very serious way of the horse moving, but all the image of Muybridge was in there. And he was not credited in the book, or just at the end. It was not Muybridge book. It was Leland Stanford book and Dr. something that nobody knows. So Muybridge was furious, and he had a trial, against Stanford, but he lost that trial. I think after 5 years of fight. So that's how their friendship ended. It lasted 10 years. So Stanford was kind of a producer, and he saw Muybridge as like a technician, I guess, and that's how he was seeing. And that's what we know that he said during the trial is all this fame kind of turned Muybridge's head, because He was maybe a bit jealous because he was having a lot of attention. He was going all around in Europe. And at the same time, Stanford was in Paris at the same time as Muybridge was there. And he saw in the newspaper the attention he had, because he was invited at Meissonier, which is this painter, Meissonier house, who was the most famous painter at the time. He was doing a lot of horse. And he was very interested in seeing Muybridge presentation. So he invited him at his home. And there was 200 painters. Degas was there as well. And all the painters that we have forgotten were there, actually. All the very, detaily and technician guy. And so, yeah, and in the newspaper, they were saying it was the most famous evening, artistic, scientific evening of the year. And maybe, Stanford was kind of, this guy is taking too much place. And then he quit.
When you're someone like that, you want all the credit.
Yeah.
I gave the
somehow.
money, so.
So, yeah, maybe he said that he helped elected him as well.
Yeah. Why was he so obsessed with having people naked? You talk in the book about he didn't want them just wearing loincloths. He wanted them to be naked.
Which in Victorian time, and that was done at the University of Pennsylvania. So they had to protect, because the students were kind of trying to looking around. I think it was because he was seeing himself as a scientific. He was not a humble guy. When he was doing his projection, he liked when people called him professeur. And he was seeing himself as a scientific at that time, not an artist anymore. And he was taking animal naked, and he wanted to have a human naked. But then when you go in detail, it goes a bit beyond that, because he had all these young girls doing movements, and some of these movements you think, is this very appropriate somehow? You see the difference. I don't talk about that in the book, but the guys jump and they do forgery, and the girls, they serve tea, and then they use water. That's from the Victorian time. They were all naked, most of them. Some of them didn't want, but that's the way he was seeing that. And at one time, people were protesting, and he just said, well, I'll do it. So you have a few frames where it's Muybridge who's naked. He was around 60. He was in pretty good shape, he's very all muscle, and he's walking like that. He's fully naked. And so he gave the example.
Have someone in the front here.
Okay, so I have 1, 2.
Hello. I seen the picture. I want to know the responsibility of the phases of the guys running and the dogs. I want to know the responsibilities for those, like how the concept of how the horses is running, and like the motion pictures, stuff like that.
Like how they made it happen technically?
Yes.
Yeah, it is interesting. Can you talk a little bit about what the technique he developed to take these pictures?
For the horse, okay. So
and all the animals after.
After that, so it's a row of 12 cameras, and all of this camera was triggered by a rope that was attached in front, and the horse would run right between, and he would take the photo by triggering these wires. So he would pass in front of these 12 cameras. It would go click, 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 click. And then you would have the 12 pictures of the horse slowly running like that. No.
It's like trip wires.
Yeah, it would trip.
And they
Yeah.
would like.
So whenever it's like, you have a rope, and if the horse would go, how to say that? It would trigger the camera when he passed in front of the camera. Click. And since there was 12 cameras, you could see the whole movement, because they would be triggered at a fraction of a second after. Very clever way of doing that. Jules-Étienne Marais in France was doing a different technique. It was clever as well. He was using a big negative, and it was all in pitch black, so the negative was not printed. And then he would use the light to flash at regular movements, boom, 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 and then he would throw a bird, and the bird would go, and that would engrave the negative. That's different technique. Yeah.
Hi. I actually have two quick questions. One more specifically about Muybridge and one about your style of art. The first one, I really love how detailed you were. It shows that you learned a lot about his experience and you could really articulate everything. But also, at one point, Sarah asked, how did it feel to make this story about someone who's not really likable? What exactly is your opinion on Muybridge? And do you think he has any redeemable characteristics? Does he remind you of anybody? I just want to know a little bit more about your thoughts about him.
Well, me as a storyteller, if there's a murder, that's good stuff. He killed the lover of his wife, so that's, and he had a judgment, and he was judged not guilty. That's in the book. So he walked out of the courtroom under the applause of the public.
Well, they agreed that he did it, but they acquitted.
Yeah.
They said, well, but the guy deserved it, basically.
That's right.
Which is
It's California in
insane. Yeah.
1870. It was all men. They were all married men in a state where there was 2 guys for 1 girl. So, to fool around with someone else's wife, it was not good. So, yeah, as a storyteller, I understand that, okay, he killed someone, he's not a good guy. But I was hesitating between different biography I could do, and I've always wanted to do a Western. I had a plan to do a Lucky Luke, these children, but that didn't work out. And I thought, man, well, that's too bad. And I was looking at the story of Muybridge, and there's horses, there's a gun, there's a murder. I thought, well, that's good enough for me.
Okay. And the other one is, how exactly did your artistic style develop along the way, and where do you draw inspiration from, if anywhere?
Well, my drawing evolves all the time. It's more subtle now. It used to change more, but to use a lot of black and white, like a lot of black, that's the second time, because I used to be just a guy who would draw with just line, but now I like to have more contrast in my drawing, and that's new because I've worked on a children's book before where I've tried to use a lot of black. And that helped me. So it was kind of exercise before, and I've used that. I would have drawn that boat just with lines, and now I use masses of black, and for me that's new. So it's an evolution. And then my inspiration, well, they're all over the place. I read comic books all the time. I go to the library, and this one is very nice. But where I'm from, we have a big one too, and they have all sorts of comics. And I think I read every week at least 2 or 3 graphic novels in comics. Yeah, and they inspire me because, but in a good way. When I was younger, I was not reading as much because I thought that wouldn't influence me too much. And at that time, when you're young, you think you don't want to be influenced, and you kind of know everything. But now, no, I read comic books, and I find stuff that just inspire me in the sense that, wow, we can do that. I mean, narratively, we can change stuff like she did, and I'm always impressed new ways you can have with these simple tools that are drawing and text in a comic book. But every year there's new ways of using that to make a new narration. So yeah, that influenced me. Yeah.
For the tones, did you do just black and white and ink, and you added the grays?
The color
afterwards?
is in computer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. It would take so long
Yeah.
to do by hand, and I don't use a texture, or so it can be just flat color. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
Someone in front.
Hello, so thank you for coming
Pleasure.
to this event. So I might have a few different questions. I was like trying to
Yeah.
trying to
wow.
write down questions.
Okay.
So you write books both in French and in English, right? Do you see areas that are lost in translation, like between if you have you write first in French,
Yeah, right.
and then it translates into English. Do
Yeah.
you see a very big difference between the language, or at least the process of it? Because you mentioned earlier that you wanted to educate France on Muybridge, right? Do you think it actually impressed upon them?
No, I don't think so. But no, I've had people who've read the book and they enjoy it. That's all I care. But I mean, most of the people that I talk to, they don't know Muybridge. If they have an animation or history of cinema, they know. But other than that, no, they don't know. And the translation, yeah. So the translator at John and Quarterly, she's doing a really good job. Yeah, she read a few books on Muybridge before doing the translation to know that she has a specific like frame of mind, or I don't know. And she sends me a lot of questions. We discuss together, and English is not my native language, so the title I've changed. In English, it's Muybridge. So I leave it to them, to the publisher and to my translator to choose what title can be. In French, it's called For a Fraction of a Second. Not the crazy, but there's movement in the title, like The Crazy Life of Eadweard Muybridge in like a second title. And so in English, it's Muybridge. It's more compact. But I don't know. They chose. Well, it's like a movie. The title changed, so I let them choose whatever they think it's better.
Okay. So I would like to ask this also. Is there any areas that you want to expand in? Your books in the past have been mostly like with Pyongyang or Shenzhen. It's like very travelogue style, nonfiction stuff, right? But then as you have gone on to later things, right, where it's fiction, right, like World's Finest, and then right now with Muybridge, it's a biography, right? Is there any other subject area that you want to go into? And can you actually disclose what's your next subject of your next book?
Yeah, because this answered the question, actually. Yeah, I want to try different things. I don't understand cartoonists that have done the same series for their whole life. I mean, I just don't get it. I wanted to do a Western, so that's done, I guess. And in the next book I'm doing, I'm actually mixing literature and comic books because there's an author I really like. His name is Jean Echenoz. He's quite known in France. He won a Goncourt, like that's a big prize over there. And he had a very small novel. It's 16 pages, and I take the text, the whole text, and I put that into a comic book in a sense that it's just his text all along. But I sometimes one sentence is going to be 4 pages. So it's a mix like illustration and comic book, and sometimes it's just 1 or 2 drawing, but sometimes it's more. So like there's characters, you see them. And so yeah, that's something I wanted to do for a long time, and I'm almost finished. It should be out next year, yeah. Because the text is done, it's easy. And yeah, it's easier because I just have to illustrate. And but it's a lot of fun to do. That's a lot of fun.
Sorry, just to follow up on her questions, like how much stress is there on the writing aspect of your work? Like I see like you are primarily a visual artist, but more expressions also come out through the writings also, right? Like it has to carry through the entire work.
Yeah.
So
but like I was saying, right, the writing is a big part, and it's a lot of work as well. There's some days you don't, just like drawing. Some days it doesn't work. And the writing is sometimes the sentence just go out like quickly, and sometimes they don't. In comic book, it's concentrate. It's very efficient. I mean, in a page you put like 5, 6 sentences. You cannot go like more than 10. That's for sure. So everything you have to say have to be condensed. You cannot talk too much. I like it because you have to be efficient, and I like that about comic book. It's efficient. Sometimes you would need more, but I don't like to have too much text. I like to have a balance of text and drawing. So for myself, when I read a comic book and there's too much text, I go like, and so I like to balance that. I prefer to spend more page and then spread the text over the page. And yeah, the text is something that I've learned because I'm more of a drawing guy, and then more and more I wanted to do my story and then write more. I used to do long sentence and try to make literature. I have very quickly learned that no, that's not me. And because my drawing are simple, I want my text to be simple. So that's why I keep it to very short sentence and just facts. And then, you know, what I don't try to do Proust in my books. And yeah, that's how it works for me.
Yeah, so just text follows art in your work.
The text follow art, yeah, and that's a balance I like to see in other comic books. When you look at a Tintin by Helge, I mean, the balance of text and drawing it's so perfect. I mean, his text is just very clean and very elegant. His drawing is very clean and very elegant. They are just perfectly balanced, and I like that. Sometimes you have very trashy underground stuff, but the text is very simple and almost boring, and I don't get it. If the drawing is super trashy, I want to have some text that goes the same way, kind of like go like an electric guitar. But that's a balance as well. It's a different style, but it's a balance.
Coming back around.
Hi again. This is building on that question as well. You spoke about having a balance between the text and the illustration and trying to kind of break up your days in a certain way so it's diverse. But what do you do when you feel overwhelmed? And how does your artistry and your cartoon development influence your lifestyle?
I don't feel overwhelmed, basically, no. After a while, when the project is very long, because when it's short, like the first 100 page, you can almost know the whole thing in your head, almost, and you can contain it. But after 100 pages, it gets bigger, and then you kind of lose the direction, kind of. So I remember when I was working on A Hostage, after 300 pages, I thought, I think this book might be just super boring because it's the story of a guy in a room who's just locked there and he tries to escape. And then I send it to a few friends who are my beta reader tester. Then I know them very well, and I photocopy and I send them, well, they're around me, so I just give them the paper to read, and then I wait for their feedback, and then I wait for my sister, my wife, not my wife, and people around me, and that's important. Yeah, that's how I work, because from the feedback I have, well, that's gonna comfort me. Or sometimes there's a few things that they don't get, or so I change. When I was younger, I didn't change anything. It's like they don't get it. But now, no, every detail that someone's gonna say, my publisher is gonna read it as well. If he has time, and then from that, yeah, I change a lot of things, yeah, and I do it as well. That's my process. I do the page like that, one a day, kind of, and after 25 page, I photocopy the whole thing, and I bring that home, and I try to read it just like I would read a comic book, another that's not mine, except that I have my red pencil, and I can change everything I want to change. Like, this text is not good, and I should put that there, and I'm gonna add a page here, or I'm gonna contract that. And so I keep redoing page a lot, and I've removed page sometimes because I was talking about one guy who was very important at that time, Nadar, who has taken a lot of picture, but he would need a whole book. And if I just try to resume his life in one page, it looks stupid. So I just remove that page, and sometimes I have other one or I contract, and that's a process I do a lot and a lot and a lot. Yeah.
So I have a question. Since you're both in the industry for a while, what up-and-coming comic artists excite the both of you?
What excites us?
Yeah, like if there's an artist or a creator that is maybe not as well known that excites you, that you want more people to know about.
Well, I'm not someone in general, but I mean recently the most exciting books I've read. Well, just to mention, they were done by girls, like young girls, and the last one was Les Contes de la Mansarde, which they were doing short stories that talks. It's kind of the Tale from the Crypt, like these old type of. So they have done 4 stories like that, and they're kind of mysterious and weird, and they actually. The stories talk to each other. Like at the end, you understand the beginning of the book. That's really well done. I don't have their name, but the title is Les Contes de la Crypte, like Tales from the Crypt, basically. They won a few prizes, and they're very good. And the year before, it was a girl who talked about soccer, like how a team of girl wanted to play soccer, but didn't have the money because all the guys' team were. So they do a game between guys and girls. It's really well done, and they win. And she used sometimes the pages completely explode. That's how it influenced me. And you don't have frames anymore, and and you have super movements of action in one page. I should have done that in Muybridge. Sometimes I'm just too timid. Yeah, so I don't have a name, but that's a general idea.
As for me, I'm really excited. D&Q is putting out a book called The Weight by Melissa Mendez, which she was publishing it in mini comic form for a long time, but coming out as a book, it's like this big, hefty book. It's weighty, and I think it looks really excellent. So,
The Weight.
So I think that's all the time that we have for this evening.
Oh, there was a question in front. I'd like to know what he has to say.
Oh.
Well,
Wait,
from the
I'm
beginning, he was
coming.
trying to have that question. Sorry.
Well, now I'm going to ask one, a different one. Oh.
Okay, sorry.
Do you ever draw something that makes you laugh? I mean, you make us laugh, but does it make you laugh?
Yeah, it happened, especially when I was doing these books with about everyday life with my children, and there was one where it happened only once. Yeah, sometimes I was laughing like that, but one I was laughing so much that I couldn't draw actually, because I was seeing my son. That's the story where, so I'm the father, and there's a leak under the sink, so I grabbed my son, and I'm going to show you how to fix, plumbing a little bit. So he goes there because he was playing his video game, and he watched me like that, and it's a photocopy, and he's just waiting that I'm doing that. And of course, the whole thing turns really bad. The water's splashing everywhere. I'm just like getting really mad and going like, God damn. And he just stays like that. And I was laughing so much when I was doing that. And at the end, he says, well, can I just go back? And I'm like, there's water everywhere. Yeah, it happened, but just, for these family stuff. Yeah.
So I think now that we're at time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for coming.